Yeah. Okay. Welcome to the special meeting for LUSD Redistricting Commission for Friday, September 10th at 4 p.m. Can we have a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Commissioner DeHaan,
Present.
Commissioner Franco,
Present.
Commissioner Gruhl,
Present.
Commissioner Hernandez, Commissioner Hernandez.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Hurtado,
Present.
Commissioner Johnson,
She's on mute.
yeah, I think she's trying to fix it, but she did indicate that she was here. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Lopez Ledesma,
Present.
Commissioner Lundquist,
Present.
Commissioner Sanchez, Antonio Sanchez.
Present.
I know Commissioner Waite's going to be joining us a little late. Vice Chair Embrys
Present. Hi, everyone.
and Chair Sanchez.
Present.
Uh,
Thank you.
Thank you. We have 11 members, Mr. Chair, and a quorum.
Okay, perfect. So we'll begin with any disclosure of ex parte communications.
Yes.
Any ex parte? Okay, go ahead. Commissioner Hurtado?
Yeah. Yeah, this is Commissioner Hurtado. So yesterday at about 7:05, Jackie Goldberg showed up to a Padres Unidos meeting and was on for maybe about 10, 15 minutes. And the only discussion that took place when she was involved was just telling them what the process was about the redistricting, and that was it. No specifics.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, thank you. Yes, on August 31st, about 6 p.m., I talked to Carolyn Fowler, who is executive assistant to Dr. McKenna, and just shared with her that I was on the ad hoc committee that would be looking at the mapping concept for the commission.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Any other ex parte communication with City Council, Mayor's Office, or board members? Okay, nothing else to report. Andrew, is there any discussion with neighborhood council representatives on resolutions regarding redistricting? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. No, Mr. Chair, as previously stated, we've only received one community impact statement from the West Side Neighborhood Council, which is on file and has been distributed to commissioners, but we don't have any of their representatives here today.
Okay, great. Thank you. So now we'll move to public comment for agenda items or multiple agenda items.
Yes, Mr. Chair, and let me go through the information on the agenda, and then I'll turn it over to the city attorney. In conformity with the governor's executive order N2920 on March 17th, 2020, and due to concerns over COVID-19, the Los Angeles Unified School District Redistricting Commission meetings will be conducted entirely telephonically. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment via Zoom webinar on the items listed on the agenda should click on the raise hand function to request to speak. Members of the public who would like to offer public comment via phone on the items listed on the agenda should call 1-669-254-5252 and use meeting ID number 161-077-4991 and then press pound. Press pound again when prompted for participant ID. Once admitted into the meeting, press *9 to request to speak. At this time, Mr. Chair, we don't have any requests for public comment. Would you like to, well, actually we have one now. So why don't we turn it over to the city attorney for further instruction.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Andrew. To members of the public calling in to provide public comment to the commission, when it's your turn to speak, we will announce your name or your last three digits of your phone number or your identifying information. When we announce your number or identifying information, then you're live in the meeting and it's your turn to speak. Please unmute yourself. You have 1 minute per agenda item to speak, up to 3 minutes total. We will announce how many items you have, or how many minutes you have to speak before you begin speaking. When speaking on an agenda item, you must be on topic. If you are not speaking on the agenda item, or if we cannot tell whether you're speaking on the item, you'll get a brief warning from me or the chair or the executive director. If you don't immediately get back on the topic, or again, you stray off topic, then we'll be forced to cut off the rest of your time and move on to the next speaker. To members of the public calling in to speak, we understand that you may be listening to the meeting on the internet or another device. Because there's a time delay between the live meeting and the broadcast, please keep an ear on your phone so that you can hear when we announce your identifying information or the last 3 digits of your number, and unmute yourself immediately. Otherwise, we might think you're no longer on the line and we'll have to move on to the next speaker. Also, if you're listening to the broadcast and the meeting on another device, please turn down the volume of that broadcast on that device to avoid any feedback or confusion because of the time delay. With that, I'll return it to the executive director.
Thank you, Mr. Trivedi. So with that, Mr. Chair, we'll start with public comment. I didn't know, excuse me, I saw Commissioner Sanchez's hand raised, and so I didn't know if he
Yeah.
had something he wanted to say.
Yeah, did you have something to say, Mr. Sanchez?
I do. Sorry, I couldn't get to my mute button in time. I do have an ex parte communication to report. Happy to wait till after public comment.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. So with that, Mr. Chair, we'll go to the first speaker. Speaker by the name of Rob Kwan. Would you please unmute yourself?
Good evening. I just wanted to call and thank the commissioners for your work in the previous meeting to come up with a much improved line drawing process. And particular thanks to Commissioner Lundquist for persistently pushing to clarify what the difference were between what you were looking at and what the City Council Redistricting Commission had passed. Additional thanks to the Executive Director, Andrew Westall, because he was very straightforward in clarifying that, which for some reason the city attorney who presided over both meetings was confused over. I do want to just say, as far as today's meeting, I don't have any comments specifically on the regional reports. Just hope that, you know, we try to get these things out as soon as possible so the public has time to take those items in. And I think overall with outreach, I mean, I did notice a lack of outreach for today's meeting, which was kind of weird because this is actually a really important one, especially compared to prior ones. Otherwise, this commission staff has done a much better job than the City Council Commission in putting together really good social media kits, really good graphic design, high quality stuff compared to the other commission, and has done a much better job of utilizing both your ENS and RSVP email lists, because like I haven't signed up with anything other than ENS, and I got regular emails for all of the meetings coming up, which isn't something you get for the City Council Commission. So, you know, there was some tough growing pains early on as far as turnout, but I don't think that's a lack of effort on the staff's part. It's just hard to get interest in an issue like this at a time like this. And with everything going on for a lot of parents, I'm assuming that redistricting is just something that is a luxury to think about in some ways. So I thank you for all of your work. I hope you do a better job of getting turnout for meetings like this, because this is you going into quite a bit of information on what priorities are and what's being staked out and what's being explored. So I just think that, you know, a little bit of disappointment with today's meeting, but otherwise want to give some kudos and thanks. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kwan. With that, we'll go to the next speaker identified as Rabbi Puppet. Please unmute yourself.
Yes. So, almighty bearded talisman, may I have general public comment and comment on all items?
Yes, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. So, we had Lorraine, that was a secret envoy to the goat puppet. Yes, we had a good discussion about this commission. And the subject of Wendy Gruhl came up. And Wendy's been ignoring the goat puppet. Encino and Sherman Oaks. Wendy doesn't like us anymore in the valley. But don't worry, Mr. Westall, we had other ex parte communications. Yes, not one, but two board members of the LAUSD secretly met in a sort of quasi-secret way with the goat puppet. And what we're trying to do here is figure out what is all of this stuff voting for mask mandates before the election? I mean, my God, these little kids are already dumb enough. You don't want to keep sticking needles in their arms with our DNA, giving them blood clots in 3 to 5 years, do you? No, 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 no. But of course you do. If you're a government worker, dumb down the kids. 5G Wi-Fi, booster shots that are ineffective, depopulation, political correctness, and of course, teaching people if they're white, they owe everybody something, don't you? Now, what do we want? In Encino, this is the most important thing. What we want is one board member, and only one board member. Somebody that won't force little kids every 5 to 6 months to go and get a shot on their arm. Have you seen these kids? Oh, yeah, I have. Yeah, they go, ah, no, mommy, it's a needle, ah. See, because the little kids, they're not like the rest of us. They see things and they're honest and show what they see. And they know the shots are no good. Needles are bad. Just like a hot stove, you don't put your head in it. But you
Please stay on
guys are
topic,
gonna
Mr.
force-
Speaker.
You're going to force everybody to keep taking vaccinations every 3 to 5 months. Is that what's going to be? Isn't that a shame? Or you lose your job or you get thrown out of school. But don't worry, everybody, because all you rich white parents will send your kids to private school. And then they don't have to deal with any of it. So your kids will grow up richer and whiter, while the rest of the brown kids will have blood clots, infections, and they won't have a 9th grade reading capability. And that's
Thank
the
you,
future.
sir. Your time has
Oh,
expired.
yes.
Thank you, Andrew.
next co-
Next speaker.
Sure. Next caller is identified as calling user 1. And so I don't have a name. So please unmute yourself, caller. Yeah, you've unmuted yourself. Please continue.
Can you hear me now,
Yes, sir.
sir?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, I want to speak on all items in general public comment, please, Mr. Attorney, jackass.
Yes, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. There's a gentleman with LAUSD named Nick Melvoin and some woman, old fat woman named Goldberger. She has been on television demanding that we children take a shot in the interest of COVID. But I find that conspiracy to kill minority niggers and brown kids a hypocrisy, because for 19 months, we've been walking around with no vaccination demands until recently when LASD and some other niggers from Los Angeles and the supervisors decided to mandate us to get shot. And it hurt very much, because when I had to roll up my sleeve for my own personal psychiatrist and doctor, that nigger stands back because I tell him, I'm going to punch you if it hurts. And he
I'm going
tells
to
me,
interrupt you. I
don't
don't think
worry.
the speaker is speaking on topic to any of the items on the agenda. Please get on topic for one of the items on the agenda, please.
Who are you to interrupt me, asshole? Let me finish my 3 minutes before you interrupt me. Did you hear me? Don't violate my civil rights, you nigger. I know what I'm talking about, you stupid motherfucker. 9/11, you asshole. Shut up. So, where was it? Oh, yeah, so when they put the needle in your arm, it makes a lot of burning pain. Kind of what they were doing to children, giving them autism, because there was just too much serum in that medication that made our children develop symptoms of autism, like what I have, asshole. Now, let me give my general public comment. Don't forget, when you vote vote for the truth. Get rid of Gavin Jackass Newsom because now he's found ways to mandate us to get shots, mandate us to listen to white America in Sacramento, when again, niggers in Los Angeles Unified School District are the minorities struggling to survive, just to be able to read third grade. The other gentleman and his goat were right. Some have reached the capacity of ninth grade reading level, while the rest of us dumb niggers only read third grade level. So, Miss Jackie Goldberg, fuck off. And that other president, dumb motherfucker, that Monica, stop eating buffet. Stop eating buffet. It's like having that COVID shot in your arm, you fat bitch, and getting sick. So I'll give you back the rest of my balance of time, asshole attorney. Fuck you.
Thank you, caller. With that, Mr. Chair, we'll go to the next caller. Next caller identified as Reina Cerros Makahi. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. Yes, my name is Reina Cerros Makahi, and I've come to the meetings before. And I just want to thank you all for taking the time to meet on a Friday afternoon. I know that we all want to get our weekends going, but thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this job. I know that you'll do a good job and that you'll make sure that all of us are heard, and the redistricting will go smoothly, hopefully. So I am sorry about everything that you've been hearing, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, caller. Next caller by the name of Carolyn Fowler. Please unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I did not plan on speaking. I just planned to observe. Thank you so much. And thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Ms. Fowler. With that, Mr. Chair, we have completed public comment of those speakers that want to speak at this time. Would you like to close public comment? We can always open it later if you'd like.
I mean, just with the final comment, I just want to say as a commission, I think I speak on behalf of all of us, that we do not condone any sexist, racist, or homophobic language. But, it is their First Amendment rights to say whatever they want to say. But, as a commission, we want to be clear about that. Thank you. Close public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Should we go to the next item?
Yeah, so we had Commissioner Sanchez that wanted to report some ex parte communication.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. On August 31st, around 11 o'clock, I called Board President Kelly Gomez's office, and I spoke to her chief of staff, shared the schedule, shared what we discussed during the last public comment before I made that call, and asked them to make sure to help in any way with the superintendent's office, as was discussed, to make sure that the district is as engaged as it can be. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. So we're going to move now to item notice for public hearing. So we're going to do first item number 1. We're going to take on all these items in one vote. So minutes for August 6th, the 11th, 18th, 21st, 23rd, 25th, 28th, 30th. The 30th, we had a special and a public input hearing that day, and September 1st. So we want approval for all minutes. So from A to J. Can I get a motion? Oh, actually, I have a question from Vice Chair Ambriz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the transcript section at the very end of them, there are a couple of pages that have some words and some mentions of the timestamps on, I believe, when those words were raised. Just want to clarify if that is exactly what those end pages in the transcripts include or detail. And my second question is also, are all of those transcripts, as I think they've been signed by the court reporter or the individual who is taking all of our notes, are all of those sufficiently complete to their knowledge? And are there any other additional updates that we need to make based upon their review? That's my second question.
Two good questions, Vice Chair Ambriz. So in terms of the words at the end, I assume you're talking about the certification about the from the reporter who actually wrote up the transcripts. And so, certainly those are accurate. The way that this process worked is we delivered the video and audio of the particular meeting to the vendor who's our court reporter who's doing these transcripts, and they did it based on the actual audio recording and video recording of the meeting. I did participate in some edits with respect to some of the early transcripts because there were some errors, not in the actual transcript, but in other parts of the document. And so had corrected those before we sent them forward.
Thank you. My question, the first question was actually about those last pages within each of the transcripts that it doesn't actually describe what we're looking at, but it indicates that it's an index. And I just want to clarify for the record that if those are the pages where individuals can go to see any words or items that were raised and the related timestamps to them, that's the location they can identify.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And now thank you for the clarification as well. And so, yes, you're correct that in the back of each of the transcript, there is an index by words that are used, during the meeting. What those, I don't believe that they're timestamps. I believe if I see it correctly, it's basically what you're looking at is a page number and then the line number after the after the colon. And so, for instance, the word court page appears on page 14 on line 7.
Any other questions, Vice Chair Brees?
Done for me, Mr. Chair. I move to adopt the minutes.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Wendy Gruhl seconds.
Okay, great. So can we do a roll?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Roll call.
Commissioner DeHaan,
Yes.
Commissioner Franco,
Yes.
Commissioner Gruhl,
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Hurtado,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez Ledesma,
Yes.
Commissioner Lundquist,
Yes.
Commissioner Antonio Sanchez,
Yes.
Commissioner Waite, who's now joined us as well,
Yes.
Vice Chair Ambrose,
Yes.
and Chair Sanchez.
Yes.
So those are approved on a unanimous vote, 12-0, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. So now let's move to item number 2. It's the presentation of the ad hoc regional committees on communities of interest and the census analysis committees and the commission discussion and possible action for staff. I mean, it'd be good to maybe set the context for today's discussion, Andrew, as we kind of just remind folks in terms of what the time frame looks like for the next couple of weeks.
Sure, I'd be happy to, Mr. Chair. So tonight or this afternoon, I'll go through quickly a synopsis of the report that was issued earlier this morning to you and to the public with respect to the discussions that took place in the ad hoc committees. In general, in terms of the next steps, we do have another commission meeting next Friday at 4 p.m. And we'll get into that in a little bit when I go through the synopsis. On Monday, September 20th, so in roughly 2.5 weeks, the state of California will release the final redistricting data set that the commission will use. That includes the state prison population adjusted data. On Tuesday, September 21st, the Executive Ad Hoc Committee will meet to review the potential draft map or maps. And then it's anticipated that on Wednesday, September 22nd, that the commission would publish a draft map or maps on our website. And then our last meeting for this particular month would be on Wednesday, September 29th at 4 p.m., where the commission would have a discussion on the draft map or maps and approve one or all of them for public circulation at that time. And so that's our next steps over the next couple of weeks. There's an entire list of that calendar in the report as well. In general, the ad hoc committees met between September 3rd and September 9th, so in the course of the last week or so, and discussed various ideas and concepts for their region of the school district and the school board member boundaries in those particular areas. And as you can see from the report, there's a summary of the committee discussions, the outline, all the ideas and concepts that were discussed. I won't get too much into those details. Leave that for the discussion of the commission and for the chairs of each of those committees to tell you give you a little flavor about what happened in each one of those committees. The Central and West Committee met on Wednesday, September 8th. The North Committee met on Wednesday, September 8th as well. And then the East and South Committee met on last Friday, September 3rd, as well as last evening on September 9th. As I said before, after that section of the report, you have a full calendar to date. And with respect to the recommendations, what we're looking for today is getting some direction to develop a draft map or maps based on the ad hoc committee discussions and further committee discussion and direction at today's meeting. And then there's a second recommendation that I want to be very clear about, that in this report, I'm proposing that we schedule another commission meeting for Wednesday, October 13th for a couple of reasons. One is that after we get done with the next round of public hearings, we don't have a date in between the public hearings and when the commission would adopt a final map. And so we need to have a meeting in which the commission spends some time discussing, narrowing your options, as it were, and making some adjustments so we can get to a final map recommendation. The second reason why I'm suggesting that we hold a commission meeting on this date is that the online mapping tool was just made available to the public on Wednesday. And at this point, we do have a meeting set up next week to hear public map presentations. But I certainly think that given the short time frame for people to do so, that it would behoove the commission to have another meeting set aside to hear those presentations from the public as well. And so it would be my suggestion that we do that on October 13th, prior to us discussing what a final map should look like. With that being said, by doing this and including this date on the calendar, currently it's anticipated that the final map recommendation would be published by the commission on October 13th, that same day. Certainly we need a couple of days for production to be able to do that. And so it's my recommendation that we shift that date to October 15th. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back over to you. And I would imagine we'd want to hear a little bit from the chairs of each committee, with respect to the ideas and concepts that were discussed.
Okay, great. So we have a question from Commissioner Lundquist.
I'm sorry, could you just restate the date?
Oh, sure. It's Wednesday, October 13th.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
I did hear October 15th as well. Wait,
So I mentioned October 15th because currently on our working timeline, October 13th is the day that we would actually publish the final map recommendation. And certainly it would be very difficult to do that on the same day that the commission met to discuss the final map, just discuss what they'd like to see in the final map. And so it's not a commission meeting that we'd have on October 15th. It's just giving an indication to the commission and the public when we would have that final map recommendation up on the website.
Okay, great. Thank you. So then decision on the 13th as a commission, and then the 15th when it will publicly be accessible on our website. Thank you.
Correct.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners before we hear from the chairs? Sorry, I had Commissioner Dahan.
Yeah, did you want to give just to make sure we're having a guided conversation after the chairs give our feedback? Do you have a proposed process on how we would go about to give the feedback?
So would you like to answer that, Mr. Chair, or shall I?
No, go ahead, Andrew.
Sure. So at this point, I think what makes the most sense for the commission is that we go through this report and kind of discuss some of these ideas and see if there's a narrowing or consensus around some ideas, or if there's other ideas that are not discussed in this report that the commission would like to take a look at. And then what I would recommend is that at our meeting next Friday on the 17th, that myself and your demographers come back with concept maps based around those ideas, and so that the commission can have an idea and the public can have an idea of what these ideas would mean with respect to redrawing the map. And then on the 17th, we would get final direction from the commission with respect to a draft map or draft maps, and then we would work on publishing them once we adjusted them for the state prison population data and had them reviewed by the executive ad hoc committee.
Thank you, Andrew. Because, just to add to that, just more than likely, we'd probably be putting out at least 2 maps, and then including if any other, public folks introduce maps themselves, right? So, but I think this commission at least would be putting out 2 maps, if not more. So that's important through that 20th vote. I know we have Vice Chair Ambriz, and then Commissioner Johnson, and then Commissioner Gruhl.
Commissioner Johnson was just ahead of me, Mr. Chair, so I'll follow her.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson, go ahead. Sorry.
Right. No, I'm wondering if there's going to be a check for a quorum on the 13th. I know that I'm not available, so I was wondering if the executive office should check for a quorum on that date to see if there's maybe a possible other date.
Okay. Andrew, if you could do that, in preparation. I mean, we have a little bit more than a month, so if we need,
certainly.
changes.
Yeah, and we'll do that. I mean, certainly, as commissioners know, it's difficult. Other than a Monday or a Wednesday or a Friday, it's really difficult to get this commission together. And that Monday happens to be Indigenous Peoples Day, and so we are limited in options. But certainly, Commissioner Johnson, I'll be happy to do that quorum check and report back next week on the actual date.
Thank you, Andrew. So, Vice Chair Ambriz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since we're on this item and given that the kind of following conversation is going to be around the conversations and discussions at each of these ad hoc committees, I think it would be really helpful to ground us and the public in some of the data that we received. I'm not sure if we've had an overview yet publicly around some of the population changes. And I know some of that information is made available and to the public. Now we have our public map, our online mapping tool available on our website. So that's great. But I do think it would be helpful if you, Mr. Chair, or if staff could open up our conversation in reminding us what the population totals and kind of a reminder of the standard deviations that are allowable within each of the districts and in the total area. I just think that would be helpful for us to ensure that everyone understands this continues to be at a data-driven process.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Chair.
And
Commissioner Gruhl?
I will just be brief because I want to make sure we all have the same expectations, I think, kind of following in Anna Teresa's comments. So what we're going to do today is that you all are going to explain the various options or the different things that people had. There's no decision today or wedded to it's this line, that line. It just is, let's give you some direction as to the options of maps you might come back with. And I think that because otherwise, we could go, no, we need to go up to this line. No, we need to go here. No, I think we just want to say there are a lot of options. What were the concepts and come back with that so that it's clear that today we're not, if you vote one way to say, oh, I want to look at this map, that doesn't mean you're wedded to that. I think it is just looking at what are the conceptual things we want to come back with next week with those maps. Is that, I want to just look at you, both Luis and Andrew, as to how we want to go so that the expectations are clear as to the next steps. Is that?
No, that's correct, Commissioner Gruhl. Yeah, no, that's correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So why don't we go like this? So Andrew, can you do some level of top lines, on deviation, some data that we know related to the maps, and then we could go into presentations and kind of just from each of the work groups, ad hoc groups around the discussions they had around concepts. Does that work for you?
Sure, Mr. Chair. I'm just working on bringing up the the presentation that was provided by ArcBridge. Let's see here. The right one. And we do have Preeti Mather with us too, who is our demographer. I don't know if she can hear us, but she was actually over in the attendees, and I just promoted her as a panelist.
Okay, great.
So with that, commissioners, this is a report that was issued a couple of weeks ago now, and that, as Vice Chair Embree pointed out, we really haven't had much discussion about. And this is just an informational report on what the 2020 census data actually shows with respect to the Board of Education boundaries in the various districts and population increases in the school district at large. And so what the first slide shows is that between the 2010 census and the 2020 census, there was a gain of 104,661 people throughout the entire school district. That's slightly less than the increase in population in the city of Los Angeles, which was 106,000 and some change. And what this slide shows you is, the different demographics between 2010 and 2020, particularly with respect to population and to voting age population. And so overall, the district is slightly a Latino majority, and you can see the rest of the statistics there. The next slide gets into the deviations, and I know this is something that we've talked a lot about throughout this commission process. And so the map, under the 2010 census had an overall deviation of 3.14%, but the 2020 map or the 2020 census under the current map has a deviation of 13.76%. And as we've talked about, that deviation needs to be less than 10%, and we have to have some good justifications on communities of interest and and other natural boundaries to be able to justify that deviation, like communities and neighborhood councils, high school attendance zones, and that sort of thing. You can also see that the ideal population of a school board member's district increased from roughly 648,000 to 663,561. What you also see here is that the districts with the most population and overpopulation of the ideal are the ones that touch the San Fernando Valley, and so that's districts 6, 3, and 4. As was laid out in the press release that the commission put out, most of the population growth, particularly in the city of Los Angeles, has been in the West Valley, and there's been a lot of population decline in the Northeast and East Side communities, and in South LA, and so that's why you also see this population shifts as well. And so districts 3 and 4 in particular, are over 5%, and certainly we'd like to get those, under 5% so we can get under that 10% threshold. And then District 5 in particular is a negative 7.79% population, and so we certainly want to get that under at least under minus 5% as well. To bring those districts to population equality, District 3 would have to lose about 33,000 people. District 4 would have to lose close to 40,000 people, and District 5 in particular needs to pick up roughly 51,000 people and some change. Throughout the rest of the report, it just gives you a breakdown of 2010 and 2020 numbers with respect to, once again, total population and voting age population, and these are the census data. And then on the bottom of each page, in the corner, you'll see what's called the citizen voting age population data, which comes from the 2015 to 2019 American Community Survey. And that's an important data set for us to use for this process as well, with respect to the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution and the Federal Voting Rights Act. And so you have a map of the current district, as well as the statistics for each one of the districts that is, once again, was provided to you a couple of weeks ago, but gives you an idea of some of the things that we have to do. And so, in general, to conclude, as you can see, we can't just take the current map as it is, even if it was perfect, and just adopt it, because we do have to make some changes. And once again, there are significant changes with respect to 5, 4, and 3, those 3 districts in particular. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions if you'd like before we get to the chair presentations from the ad hoc committees.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Is there any questions from commissioners or comments before we go into the presentations? Okay, seeing none. So why don't we start? Why don't we start up in the valley, and then we'll go down. So we could start with the ad hoc group. I think Hannah, that's the one you chaired, straight up there, right? There you go, Commissioner Dahan.
Yes, I think I'll keep it brief because I think all of our notes were accurately reflected in the report provided to the full commission. But I think there was like 3 headlines, and the first was, although we weren't charged with District 4, it was very clear that District 4 had portions that were going into the valley. And so that was one thing we recognized. But really, we focused on obviously 3 and 6 and cleaning those up, and wanted to use the freeways as guidelines for that, the 405, the 101, the 170. And so we did a lot of cleaning up so that we could have a real West Valley district. And then you had in 3, and then you had 6 more cleaned up. And so then that required us shifting or proposing some shifts to occur from 3 to 4, and then offsetting that in other places. And so those are I think is something that we all just wanted to elevate, that the valley isn't alone without kind of addressing what happens to 4. But our goal was to try to keep the West Valley as close together as possible. There's a portion of 3 that kind of sneaks down right below 6, and then also trying to keep 6 not too much into 3. And then I think the other thing that came out was just talking about how we keep communities. We understand that there's going to be splits that are going to have to happen. But we really wanted to elevate, making sure we made districts where the communities had a lot in common, so that you weren't putting some communities in a district where they were just kind of an outlier to the rest of the community's kinds of needs or interests. And so that, again, kind of came up in how we were thinking about where we would group 4 in relation to 3, and making sure that it was communities that would be from the valley in 4 would reflect similar interests and needs from communities in the rest of Board District 4.
Thank you, Commissioner Dahan. So why don't we now go to Vice Chair Ambriz. So that's like the west side, South LA seat. So I guess there's some level of the valley, but
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Our ad hoc group included Commissioner Johnson as well as Commissioner Gruhl, and we were tasked with considerations around District 1 and 4. 4, as you mentioned, the kind of west side that buttresses the kind of ocean on the left, and then central LA for District 1. And similar to Chair Dahan's conversations in her ad hoc committee, we were also mindful of the shifts that needed to occur up north in Districts 3 and 6 as we were considering District 4. So we did have a lot of conversation, as reflected in the notes as well, around what the population numbers were in the kind of lower valley area that buttressed the 101, as well as around the kind of the 405. And we also considered ensuring that communities of interest stayed whole, and also we are mindful of some of the attendance zones and the enrollment zones in the area. And we really want to try as best as we can, I think generally, to keep those school zones together as much as possible. So in the report, you'll see some of the considerations that we discussed. We also looked at some population counts, which we included in our report too. And over to District 1, the central LA area. And I will offer too that Districts kind of 1 and 4 are very unique in that they have small cutouts for cities that sit in kind of the middle of each district. So for example, Beverly Hills and Inglewood are kind of cut out in each of the districts. So we were mindful around that too. But in District 1, which is really around central LA, we also considered how any changes there would impact some of the neighboring districts, 5, 2, as well as 7. We had some conversations around the southern part as well as the northern part. But overall, we're aware that District 4 does need to kind of balance out some of the population. So we know that it would actually decrease in size for population and District 1 being the same. So all of the notes can be seen in the report. And we're also happy to answer any questions that commissioners have or the public has. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Ambriz. I know we have a couple. Is it fine if we do the last report and then we could go to questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Commissioner Lundquist. So Commissioner Hernandez.
Thank you, Chair Sanchez. So I was chairing the ad hoc committee for districts 2, 5, and 7, which included Chair Sanchez, Commissioner Franco, Commissioner Repening, Commissioner Waite, and Commissioner Hurtado. And I just want to thank you all for your engagement. We know that this, for all of us, right, this is no easy task, and it was definitely a balancing act. So definitely doing our best and trying to contemplate different scenarios and keeping into consideration some of the, definitely the rules, regulations, consequences, and staying away from any type of legal ramifications. But as was mentioned before, this is definitely data-driven process. And so we really appreciated City Attorney's debrief to provide us with an outlook as we entered these conversations. And so for us, one thing I did want to share is that we continue to look at the high school attendance rates, the population distribution, specifically in 5, 2, and 7. Actually, there was a need for an increase based on the new numbers that we're looking at. And we, going into these conversations, wanted to make sure that population distribution was top of mind, communities of interest, especially those that we heard during public comment. And as been mentioned with some of my other fellow commissioners, keeping communities whole, which is really important. One thing to that point that really stood out was 5 and 2, specifically 5 in the way that on the eastern side of this map, it sort of like wraps around District 2. And we heard a lot of public comment about the different communities and community of interest there, and how there was definitely a need to reevaluate here and looking at the east side and some of the other communities of interest, including Boyle Heights, El Sereno, Lincoln Heights. So one thing that did come up is there was that sliver to the eastern, eastern part of our district that just connected 5 from the northeast down to the southeast, and finding ways to keep, again, that east side community whole. And then also looking District 7 that goes down to the South Bay up to Gardena. And again, looking at how we can keep the city of Gardena whole and looking at those high school attendance districts. And then going into 5, one thing that we also contemplated is to remove that sliver there on the eastern part, was to create District 5 Southeast coming up into that corridor there, the Santee, Pico Union area. And then for District 2, maybe looking at how we connect the east side to keep that communities of interest with Boyle Heights up to the northeast area, going further west into Hollywood. But there's just a lot of contemplation, as all of my commissioners can probably attest to, a lot of balancing acts and the numbers and what those, what that looks like. This is definitely no easy task, as I mentioned, and big responsibility. So I appreciate everyone's contributions and your public comments as well. And one thing, that we will have available too is that online mapping tool, which will be a great resource for the public and your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hernandez. So it'd be good now to take some questions or comments from other commissioners that either are part of the process or may have questions for their fellow commissioners ad hoc groups. So we could start with Commissioner Lundquist.
Thank you. Thank you to all of the committee chairs for your summaries. I really appreciate hearing them. And I just wanted to make one comment and ask a question. So the comment is about the Valley group that Commissioner DeHaan summarized so well. I just wanted to note that in the written notes, there's quite a bit of discussion at the beginning about neighborhood councils and moving neighborhood councils. And, you know, I think that's accurate in the sense that we were looking at neighborhood council boundaries at the beginning of the meeting, but I think, you know, we shifted to looking at high school attendance zones. And I just wanted to sort of tell the commission that I think that many of us, you know, would probably think of high school attendance zones as more important to keep intact than the neighborhood council boundaries, although of course we'd like to keep both intact as much as possible. And then I had a question about the summary of the East and South Committee, and I just wanted to make sure that I understand the written notes that we're looking at. So items 6, 7, and 8 from the first meeting, are we to understand those as 3 different concepts that you discussed and talked about with respect to districts 2 and 5? Just want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I'm not sure if Commissioner Hernandez or Andrew want to answer that question about the concepts.
Commissioner Hernandez, would you like to, or shall I?
Sure.
Okay.
So yeah, so those last 3 are 3 different concepts. We really wanted to make sure that we looked at every possible iteration and see what made sense, again, looking at those numbers. So those are all 3 different contingencies, or yes, different concepts. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then just to add to that, it's we focused on one, which is the one conceptually the Southeast leaving the traditional, you know, kind of you know, the way it works right now, right? And then going into, but we also looking at the current and just doing cleanup, like I think most of the other kind of ad hoc committees did. And then we looked at another concept that may not be viable at all, may not pass legal muster, but we looked at all the options of like moving stuff out because we saw the Southeast as a community of interest in itself. So we wanted to make sure that we kept that one as whole as much as the East Side. Yeah. So Commissioner, I have a comment too, but I'll go after Commissioner Johnson.
Oh, just wanted to add to that too. So also for these, you know, configurations, we're also looking at the natural boundaries. So, you know, the 110 freeway, the 5 freeway to help with this decision, including the high school attendance zones. Like those are all considerations as we were looking at this. That's why we wanted to see what fits best for, and it makes most sense considering the feedback and the data. Does that answer your question, Commissioner Lundquist?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
Okay, cool. Commissioner Johnson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we going to see today a visual of the concepts that came out of each of the ad hoc committees? You know, we all had several concepts, and Pretty was really great on putting those in action for us. So are we going to be able to see those, to visualize what we're talking about, rather than just this narrative that we've gone through?
So the goal, Commissioner Johnson, is certainly it's at the, you know, at the will of the commission of what to do, but the goal is to discuss you know, look at these concepts that the committee's talked about, see if there's other concepts that commissioners may have, or if there's a narrowing of concepts. And then we would come back at the meeting next week on the 17th with actual maps, concept maps of what these things would look like, so that you could actually visualize them and give further direction to staff with respect to what you would like to see in a draft map or maps. And so the answer is yes, we will have visualizations, but that will be at the meeting on the 17th next Friday.
Thank you.
Okay,
Any other, do you have another question, Commissioner Johnson?
well, I guess when you're talking about visualizing, I appreciated the talk, and people saying, the freeways. And I guess I'm thinking about some of our people, some of the citizens who might be looking in on this. I mean, I don't know that they're understanding anything we're saying. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But I'm just wondering if, because there were several renderings, and again, they're all concepts, and I understand that. But so let me be clear, and maybe I'm going to ask a question. So each of the concepts that each of the ad hoc committees came up with, we will see visually at our next meeting. Is that my understanding?
Unless there's a particular concept that the commissioner doesn't want to entertain anymore, that's correct, Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah, okay, Commissioner. I mean, I do think, Andrew, I do think maybe just for visual, because some people are like, could know the map well enough that they could see how it plays out, but may not be familiar with other parts of the district. Maybe I would agree with Commissioner Johnson is that if we want to just show some visually how these concepts look, I think that might be helpful. We're not agreeing on this. These are concepts that we're all agreeing for you all to maybe bring together for next time. But that way, I think it's fine because it's not a vote of any of these concepts, because it also could help maybe tell us like, oh, let's not look at all these concepts anymore. Maybe we're only going to look at 2 or 3 versus 4 or 5. So that's something that visually maybe we could do. We could probably show them just so people understand the map a little bit better. So I have Commissioner Waite and then Commissioner Gruhl, and then I'll say a comment.
First, I'll just say ditto on everything you just said. Exactly. It would be a lot easier for me and probably a lot easier for the public to consume this. And of course, we've been working very hard at being transparent to the process. And I wouldn't want somebody to say, oh, well, you hid something here, hid it in plain sight. But, when you put it in text, it's one thing, but when they actually see it on the map and they see how things come together and see how these interact, I think people need that information for when they're using the mapping tool themselves and working on things. So I would just really hope that we could just see concepts and know that they're just drafts and get them out to the public as soon as possible, and to us, just to all of us to be better informed. Thanks.
Sure. And so, Mr. Chair, on that point, just so I'm clear with the commission, it's certainly our goal and your demography team's goal to produce a variety of concept maps that we would publish as part of the agenda materials for your meeting next Friday. Certainly, we want to try to do that 72 hours in advance. And so it's my goal to get this out to the public and to the commission no later than Tuesday afternoon. So that gives you an idea of the time frame we're talking about.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Gruhl.
Well, that answered one of my questions. And I think the other issue as well for me is those feeder schools and the attendance, et cetera, because sometimes, and again, we'll see in the maps, geography may suggest one, and this is just something I want to consider. Geography might suggest something, but the feeder schools might suggest something else. So I think it is important as we talk about communities of interest, that communities of interest also include those feeder schools. So for example, in some of the options that you put forward, it would be important to include with the map and the concept that you put forward, a point of this allows these feeder schools or this attendance group to be together. This one would move one into another area, et cetera. So that data will be important when you provide the maps.
So no, that's a great point, Commissioner Gruhl. And I think what we can do for every concept map that we produce, we can do kind of one general map just so that, so people know what it looks like without any overlay data. And then we can overlay the high school attendance zone areas, the school locations. And if it's not too busy, we'll do the middle school attendance areas too, or maybe we'll do a third map with that. But I think all those kind of 2 or 3 maps for each concept makes sense to me, and those overlays I think are very helpful too, because certainly to your point, Commissioner, there are certain lines of the map which may look a little awkward today, but they're actually built on high school attendance boundaries. And certainly in some of these concepts, your staff's been trying to do that as well.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Vice Chair Ambriz?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Some of the information we also didn't yet have, which would be additionally helpful for the follow-up, would I think also include some of the other criteria that the city attorney outlined for us as common interest. And I'm not sure what data we have, so I defer definitely to the demographers and to staff here, but there were common interests laid out, including income, housing patterns, cultural and language characteristics, some of the economic patterns. And I do think it would be helpful to see some data around certain communities, if there's a way to overlay some of that data, or even if it's just an attachment or an index. I think that would be helpful, especially as we're thinking about those very kind of densely populated areas and having to make some tough decisions. So if that's possible also, Mr. Chair, I think it would be really helpful for some of the future considerations.
Certainly, Vice Chair Ambriz, I'll talk with our demography team and see what we can put together. The data that you're referring to is from the American Community Survey, 2015 to 2019. And so it's certainly available, not at the block level, but at, I believe at the block group level, or at least the track level. But we'll see if we can do kind of some just basic maps of the entire district of some of those data points and see if that would be helpful as commissioners go through their deliberations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. So Andrew, I'm wondering, because this is, I'm calling on myself in terms of, I'm wondering if we want to, I'm not sure if Priti could show some of the similar stuff yesterday. It'd be good to people just see conceptually, especially given that 2 and 5, the concepts all look different, So if we want to minimize one of the 3 concepts that we don't want to move forward on, then it'd be good to get some guidance now, because I think those are the places, and it's not about, these are just concepts, right? Because we still have to do some cleanup probably around attendance area, but it's concepts that allow communities to stay whole. I'm wondering just visually so people could hear. I know they've been hearing it, but just see it visually. That'd be good so that we could at least land on something that you all will have clear guidance on for the meeting next week.
Yeah, so I don't know if we're prepared to do that, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
And so I think, that's
great.
that's my only issue with that. But as I said, we'll go through each one of these concepts and provide them to you. We just need a couple of days for production.
Okay, great. Vice Chair Ambriz?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. I did have a question perhaps for the city attorney. If we were to have proposed these maps today, would we have any kind of legal challenges and boundaries? So for example, as they are drawn, would we expect some kind of legal concerns, and would we expect some appeals?
Do you mean like the current map as it's currently drawn and we didn't change anything? Is that what you're asking about? Because the concepts that are put forward in these committee reports, there are multiple different iterations that seem to arrive from them. So we'd have to see how they all stitch together. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question correctly.
Yes, the current. So yeah, the former. If we kept, for example, some of the districts that we know are interestingly mapped out, would that pass muster?
Right. So the map, when it was adopted back in 2012, did. The population shifts, of course, are one factor that would cause issues. If you don't change anything, you would have a population deviation that's greater than 10%. And so that would raise concerns under the equal population principle. Quite honestly, considering that the map that's the status quo map, the current map, is not one that you seem to be considering. We haven't dived into the technical numbers of the citizen voting age population and all the other demographics of the map, but we could if that's an option you'd want. But of course, you have to make a change to some extent because of population equality issues. So the current map isn't viable for that reason.
Okay, and a follow-up to perhaps for staff, Mr. Chair, or if you have it offhand, what would the population number and count be of the 10% standard deviation for the kind of total population? I'm assuming it's just 10% of the 660? Or is there
Yeah,
a
so
different?
Madam Vice Chair, it's a little difficult to give you an exact answer on that. And the reason I say that is because you could actually have, 6 of the districts at 0% deviation and when one at -10 or +10. I know from a mathematical standpoint that doesn't make sense, but my point is that it has to be a range of 10%. So that could mean that one district could be -6% and another district, the highest district could be +3.95%, and that's 10%. So I guess what I'm saying is while it's easier to think about it in the way that you really don't want to go higher than a +5% deviation for any district or a -5% deviation, you actually have a range of that 10% that you can play with that would allow you to, underpopulate a district by 8% as long as your most populated district was less than 2% over. So I hope that helps. I can certainly, if you wanted me to, if you gave me a quick second, I could give you an idea of what that number is at the 5% range. But that's really the best explanation I can give, because the idea is that it's 10%, but it's, it can move around, right? It's not set on that -5 or +5.
Right. I asked because if we are thinking about the 10% of the whole, granted it is in total, the 66,000 or so number already is very close to the number that we need to adjust for District 5. So a comment that I want to offer to the public is there really is no option for us to keep the status quo maps. There must be additional shifts, and it must happen in the districts that were outlined a little earlier, and very significantly in District 5. So as we do prepare for some additional maps, I just want to reiterate that we're already so close to that deviation. So even if we didn't change districts 1 through 4 and 7, we would already be kind of really close to that number.
Yeah.
So
District 2 and 5, you got 70,000 together, right? So as well.
Yeah.
So.
And Mr. Chair, just to give, just to kind of follow up on the conversation with Vice Chair Ambrose. So if you went to a -5% or a +5% deviation, that's 33,000 people either way, right? So your 663 is, your ideal number. It's basically 33,000 each way if you stayed within a +5% or a -5%. And so, for instance, we were talking about District 5 a second ago. District 5 is 51,000 over. So at minimum, District 5 needs to gain at least, roughly 20,000 people to get under that -5%. Certainly, we want to make sure we're building it on communities of interest and community boundaries and natural boundaries and high school attendance zones. So it could be more or less. It's not an exact science as long as we get it underneath that 10% total. Now, all of that being said, it's also important to note that with the state prison population adjusted data, that number will change, right? Because that number will go up at some threshold overall for the entire district when that state prison population adjustments are made, because we don't have any state prisons in the Los Angeles Unified School District, but we do have folks that are currently in state prison. We're such a large district that it's just inevitable that we'll have some people that do that. So once again, that's the number under the census data. But as I said, it's going to increase, and we just don't know what that will be for another 10 days.
Thank you. Commissioner Waite.
Just on that last point, isn't Terminal Island within the district, or is it? I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was within I think it's within the LA City boundary. So
that's a federal.
Yeah, I was going to say, I believe that's a federal prison, Commissioner Waite.
Right.
So the law only requires state prison. So even even the Twin Towers downtown, which typically has roughly 5,000 people in it, you wouldn't adjust that population either. So it would be somewhere like, Chino Institution for Men or Chino Institution for Women are probably the closest state prisons, although I think there's a state prison in northern LA County as well.
How about youth facilities? Do those count? Because there are state youth facilities as well.
I don't believe so. The language of state is strictly straight prison population. So I don't believe that's counted, but Hareed, I don't know if you know any different, but I don't believe so.
It just applies to state correctional facilities, inmates at state correctional facilities. So my understanding is they're downcycling the number of juveniles in any facilities that and then would be counted towards this.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Wade. So one of the things that I wanted to add as part of the conversation, I think one of the things that we were discussing, and if other commissioners in our ad hoc group want to chime in on this, is part of the problem of dealing with the horseshoe or the inability of over the last different election cycles of the Southeast to elect a candidate of choice, is that if in any variation that we kind of kick the problem to another community of interest, right? And so that's the kind of like the challenge we're trying to figure out, because in the other concept, essentially, instead of the Northeast and some level all the way up to Los Feliz and those kind of areas would transfer from being with the Southeast to being with the East side, right? So those are in those different concepts is we're trying to figure out is now will that create a problem that places like the East side will now not be able to elect a candidate of choice, right? And so that those two concepts, and I think that's why it's been a difficult conversation. I would say in 7, it's just been more about how north we go, right? Related to both Gardena and then into deeper Central Ave kind of thing. I do feel between 5 and 2 has been, as we kind of deal with that horseshoe that looks weird on the map and has been there for kind of like the last 2 iterations of the map, is that how do we fix and kind of keep communities whole without creating a similar problem in a new district?
Chair Sanchez, I think you muted yourself. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, sorry, Commissioner Johnson and then Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of the comments that I hear we're starting to make are beyond some of the concepts that were presented in those ad hoc reports. So I don't know if we're making it a more confusing issue to keep talking about other areas that weren't in that report, and we don't have the visuals to go along with it. So at this point, I don't know, I can't speak for the public, but I know we're beginning to talk about issues and beginning to talk about what we're looking at outside of what I think was in the original report. So I would hope that when we come back at our next meeting, that we have the visuals and we have all of the things that were outlined by the various commissioners of why those concepts were originally talked about, and anything that that's going to be added to that. But to continue the conversation about what should be there and what shouldn't be there, if it wasn't in our reports, are we saying we want to change what we originally put forward, or what? I guess I'm not clear on how we're moving forward on that.
Commissioner DeHaan?
So 2 comments. One, a thought that came to me as you were speaking, Commissioner Johnson, though, is I think that because those ad hocs weren't inclusive of the whole commission, I do appreciate hearing things that may not be in the report, just because I think this is our public opportunity as a whole commission to consider any and all ideas. So I also appreciate the challenge of having these conversations without visuals or something to reference to, but just wanted to ensure that to the extent we're able to have these conversations all together, that'll probably help us in the long run, because at least we're not leaving anything off the table. And then my own comment was specific to just wanting to raise something in that same spirit that I felt like I raised in the ad hoc, that I wanted to make sure I raised to all of the commissioners, was part of the tension for me between neighborhood councils and high school attendance zones, as well as like considering other ways of communities of interest, was that at least for parts of the valley that we were looking to shift between 3 and 4, and less so with 6, is that if you look at the actual attendance of students at that point, there's a big drop off, usually around 3rd and 4th grade. People exit the public system in that part of LAUSD, or definitely by high school. And so in trying to think about how we are really creating voice for those who attend schools, you often see a lot of migration occurring into these parts of the district from other parts of the district. And so I just wanted to elevate that. I think in addition to looking at, you know, the numbers and patterns from a perspective of where things are, I think we should also look at like the numbers and patterns of who's really being served and what kind of voice and representation they should have, and balance that with also like the communities that are voting there. And that's why I think looking at how we're making these districts, as a whole community of interest, even if there's kind of sometimes separate, I think will be important in ensuring that there's the right type of representation as a whole on the LAUSD board. And that I think is a nuance that's tricky and hard to balance, but I think it's some of the things I'm also hearing coming up in the discussions about like, what do you do with the East Side as you're trying to fix the Southeast cities, and making sure that we're not also disrupting other communities of interest to make sure that as a whole, each district is representative of at least some common needs and interests that are electable in a representative to represent those needs and interests.
Thank you, Commissioner DeHaan. I mean, that was one thing I want to state, the point that I mentioned was a discussion related to the map concept. So I was just trying to explain it as part of it. So it's in the notes. It's part of the map concept conversations that we were having. So it's not new information. It was actually a regular discussion point related to the different map concepts that we dealt with as and if it's not in there, maybe we need to add it. But it was definitely a regular conversation. Just an added point, Commissioner DeHaan, that we also discussed, and I'm not sure if this was part of also your conversation around attendance boundaries. One of the other things that is also important, we also have to be cognizant, because it's one of the legal things, is that's actually one of the few things that is part of the charter is attendance boundaries, right? But one of the things that we also discussed is that some of these attendance boundaries are now open enrollment, because they cannot fill their schools with local kids, right? Or there's no local kids to name up, right? For example, my kid's school, Solano, has become up enrollment. Some schools are 50-50, right? Like Aldama, right? In the Northeast. So there is this kind of like changing dynamic of attendance patterns that don't follow form or function like they have historically. So that's something that, as we kind of think about of communities of interest, is thinking about that. I mean, that's somewhat important.
I wanted to highlight to that point, that came up because in District 3 and mostly there's a lot of charter high schools that are now independent and some are still dependent. And so there's a lot of charter schools that are in that part of Board District 3. To your point about it, I just wanted to highlight that other nuance of the attendance boundaries, which is why it was so specific to Board District 3, because of these high schools that have changed their attendance and enrollment practices. So thank you for that.
Yeah, Commissioner Grove.
Yes, I'm sorry. And this is a really interesting conversation to me, so I appreciate it that was brought up. And I'm assuming that you can provide that data to us, which shows, as you said, there are a lot in the Valley that people who are moving, when I was in Studio City, people went to Cleveland, they went to Taft, they go all over different places. So if that data is available to show us how that moves, because I think that's just an important consideration as we look at, I think, right now, it looks like there are 2 options concepts that will be, at least I see from the 2 different meetings. One has three 3 being all west of the 405, and then 4 picking up Sherman Oaks. I'm just talking about the valley part, Sherman Oaks, Studio City kind of area, and then 1 just uses the existing map of 4 and goes and covers up to Reseda kind of high school area and so forth. So I think that would just be interesting to see that data. And so that, Andrew, you're able to provide that going forward?
Well, certainly we'll reach out to the school district. It has been very difficult with respect to providing us with data. I mean, we can't even get them to give us enrollment data at a census block or census block group or track level. And so I'll see what we can do to try to get some of that data. I'm still trying to get a list from them of feeder schools into other schools that aren't based on, just the maps that we've been looking at. And I've been unsuccessful to date. So we'll keep pushing that issue, and we'll see if we can get that together quickly. It's another one of those issues that we were having some great traction with the former board secretary, and things kind of fell apart when he retired back in June.
All right, well, let me know if there's something that I can do to help, push that a bit, because I think that data would be useful.
Sure, no, I appreciate that, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Gruhl. So is there any other comments? Because I don't have any hand raised, so I'm just trying to figure out. So Andrew, so at this point, do you have any questions for you in particular that are now tasked with taking these ideas and concepts and putting some variations of maps together for us for the next meeting? Because you're
No, I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I would say I would like some clarification on one particular concept because I think it would reduce your staff's workload. So certainly in the District 1 and 4 committee, there was an interest of keeping Gardena whole and outside of District 1. And it seemed like the East and South committee covering 1, 2, 5, and 7 was heading in that same direction at the second meeting yesterday. And so, if the commission is comfortable with it, we'd like to only show you options of having District 7 contain all of Gardena in District 7. And that would just, that would cut down on the number of concepts that we have to produce for you. And so that, other than that, I think I'm pretty comfortable with the direction that the committees went into. And I feel like we have a couple of iterations between 2 and 5. We have a couple of iterations between 3 and 4. And then the other districts, particularly if we're able to keep Gardena whole in District 7, that the other districts, you probably only have one concept unless there's some reason for population shifts, depending on those other configurations.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, we considered that in our district, our ad hoc committee discussion, and it was really dependent upon how the shifts were going to occur up in the northern area, and of course, dependent upon how it would shift in 5 and 2 and also 7. So while we weren't really thinking about or making recommendations on 2, 5, and 7, we were mindful of that too. So I think those adjustments, well, in our committee, we did not make a decision. We discussed and explored it. I think we would be open to it. But it might be helpful to just kind of reiterate what those population shifts would be as the ad hoc committee on 2, 5, and 7 are continuing to look at it.
Sure, Madam Vice Chair. So as indicated on page 1 of the report, currently District 1 has 11,322 people in the city of Gardena, and it's in a neighborhood north of Rosecrans Avenue between that and the northern city boundary of El Segundo Boulevard. And so we're talking only 11,322 people. It's easy to shift that around and keep the city whole. And as I said, I think it's certainly easier from a staff's perspective to, only come back with, one concept, keeping Gardena whole, but certainly we can do both if that's the desire of the commission.
Yeah. I mean, I'll add a point, then I'll go to Commissioner Johnson. I think it goes with one of our values is we want to keep communities whole, and we want to keep communities as whole as possible throughout the map, even at the borders, right? So I think conceptually, if there's some on the back end legally or something that we have to fix, we have to do that, but it does follow most of the feeder patterns from what I saw, and also keeping communities whole, which are two important concepts they wanted to drive the map. So Commissioner Johnson.
Yes, thank you. I think, and I think this is where Commissioner Vice Chair Ambrose was going. I'm not sure. The reason that we didn't make a decision on that was because not knowing what the other ad hoc committees were going to be doing with respect to that area, it was difficult. So I would prefer to see all of our concepts put forward, and not that and I think I said in the beginning that I probably wouldn't disagree with moving everything to Gardena, but I think at this point, it was a concept. And because we don't know what the other concepts are going to look like, that one more map, I don't think would make that big a difference. That's just my opinion. I know it's a little more work, but I would like to see all the concepts put forward so that we can have a discussion. Because when we look at the other concepts in total, maybe it doesn't work. It works in terms of population, but there's some other issues that we talked about that it may not work. And so I would like to make sure that that's going to be a positive way of looking at
it. Commissioner Hernandez.
I just wanted to echo those sentiments. At this point, I think one thing that we're all talking about is that transparency factor. So we could just see that additional concept just to see what those numbers look like. I think that's just, that would be appreciated. And that is also in the notes for 2, 5, and 7 to see what those look like, whether we kept it whole or we split that up. So we can just see that for numbers and data purposes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah,
I think that's clarity, Andrew.
Yeah, that
Right,
gives me all the
that's on that
clarity I
one.
need,
Okay, good.
Mr. Chair. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Happy to do it.
Okay. Any other? All the other concepts are pretty clear, right? Andrew, on the other ones?
Yeah, everything else.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, everything else kind of works in similar fashion. As I said before, you'll have different reiterations of 2 and 5 and different reiterations of 3 and 4. And the rest of it kind of, I think, works within each other. So, but we'll come back with as many maps as we need to show you these concepts.
Okay, we have Commissioner DeHaan.
My apologies, I have to go because of childcare, but I didn't want to, I'm very sad I'm leaving before the outreach report, but so I wanted to just make a comment that I noted not only in the report, but also in our meetings, the increase in attendance and outreach, and just, I won't be here during the reports. I just wanted to acknowledge that and appreciate the staff, particularly Genesis work to do that, but I know it's a team effort. And so I have to go because of childcare issues, and that's not reflective of my lack of interest in any of the remaining topics of this meeting, but it has been a very busy time for this redistricting committee. So thank you, and thank you all. I also wanted to say that I apologize. I was so rushed to do my talking points for the ad hoc committee that I didn't also acknowledge the participants of Lorraine and Antonio, and now I'm blanking. It was, who am I missing? Who was that other one?
Lopez Ledesma.
Yeah, Yvette.
Yes, Yvette. Thank you so much, Yvette. I'm sorry about that. This is also what happens mom brain on Friday. So I wanted to acknowledge all of them and say everything I said was not all my ideas. It was the collective group, and just acknowledge everybody. So thank you, and have a good weekend, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner DeHaan. Okay, if there's no further comments, I think Andrew and the staff have the work cut out to put all these concepts together by the next meeting. And there's a guarantee that it will be all out 72 hours before that next meeting, right? Andrew, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair. And as discussed earlier, we'll come back and we'll do a quorum check for that commission meeting in October that we'll need.
Okay, so can we move on to the next item? Because we don't need any action on agreeing on that meeting date, right? We're good, right? So we're just doing
I think you provided general direction to the executive
Okay.
director and staff to come back with the concepts based on this report.
Okay, great, thank you. So can we move to the outreach report?
Sure, Mr. Chair. I'll turn it over to our outreach director, Genesis Coronado, who will update you on the outreach. Once again, as earlier this morning, you were all distributed to both you and the public a report on the outreach that has been done so far. And so I'll let Genesis give you a summary of that so you can open it up to any discussion and questions.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a quick presentation that aligns with a lot of the key points that are outlined in the report. So if I'm allowed, I'd like to present that to the commission.
Sure. Can you share your screen, Genesis? You should be able to.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, great. There we go.
Is that visible for folks? Awesome. Okay, great. So let's get started. I'm just going to start with a quick overview of some of the strategies that the outreach team took on for phase one. So we did flyer distribution. We definitely looked to do a lot of partnership with different community-based organizations, conducted outreach to elected officials, labor organizations, worked with LAUSD to get the word out as well, through also some of the City of LA departments, did a robust email distribution outreach strategy, social media and digital paid ads, as well as traditional media outreach and some grassroots education that was taken on as well. So for the first strategy, flyer distribution, we distributed over 12,000 flyers. It was via the street team and some CBOs. Some of the locations in which those flyers were distributed included grocery stores across the LAUSD district, some libraries, and some community-based organizations helped us as well in distributing some of these flyers to their members. And the street team also distributed some flyers at their community events. The street team also, when they attended these community events and did the flyer distribution at the grocery stores, they also took their iPads and tried their best to educate the public on where redistricting was and is. And they also try to get folks to submit the public comment form at that moment when they were discussing what redistricting was with the community. So we reached out to 97 community-based organizations. The team scheduled introductory meetings and calls. We shared our flyers. We developed email drafts to make it easy for them to distribute it to their distribution list. Also developed, provided some social media blurbs to also make it easy for them to post it on social media, and provided additional talking points on the subject. We also pushed to get some attendance commitments from their staff as well as some of their membership at our meetings. And, given the turnout at our public hearings, we want to give credit to this community-based organizations. We do believe that they were the main proponents in helping us turn people out at our public hearings. We also did outreach to 87 elected officials, including congressional representatives, state representatives, all of the LA County Board of Supervisors, and local representatives at the City of Gardena, West Hollywood, San Fernando, Lomita, Carson, Southgate, Cudahy, Bell, Maywood, Huntington Park, and Vernon. And equally with the CBOs, we also shared our flyers and our social media blurbs, email distribution lists. So they send it out to some of their constituents, and many of them also shared it on social media. With labor organizations, we conducted outreach to the LA County Fed, UTLA, SEIU Local 99, CSEA Local 500, and the Teamsters Local 572. With labor, we were not as successful in getting a lot of turnout or engagement on their end, given that the labor organizations were largely focused on the current governor recall elections. And in my discussion with Commissioner Antonio Sanchez, we are hopeful that we'll be able to get some more turnout and some more engagement from their labor members at the next phase. In regards with LAUSD, most of my communication was with the Amanda Wirrett, who is the interim board secretariat. from the beginning, of my initial conversation with her on August 5th. She wanted the information to be vetted through legal counsel and ethics. And once that was cleared on August 15th, I requested for information to be sent to the Parent and Community Services Office at the local districts, as well as the Board of Education, the Interim Superintendent's Office, and for information to also get posted on the official LAUSD accounts, the websites and their social media. With regards to the City of Los Angeles, we did outreach to all of the LA City Council members' offices, requested that they posted it on their social media as well as included in their weekly newsletters. Most of them have weekly newsletters. We also conducted outreach, the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, which is the neighborhood councils, and they committed to sharing our information on their newsletters, which goes out to all their neighborhood councils. In addition, we also were able to get the LA City Department of Recreation and Parks to share our flyer and send out an email blast to 12,000 of their contacts. Our current email distribution list is at 507 emails, which is composed of folks that sign up for ENS system, which is the early notification system, the City of LA's early notification system. Some of those emails were also collected through our media ads that had a specific email capture strategy, as well as anyone that attended any of our past public hearings was also included in this email database. The team has developed a MailChimp account, which allows us to track the number of people that open our emails, et cetera. And so at the currently we have an open rate of 48.1. And so, one of the things that we noticed with these emails that we were sending out, as you can see on the slide, that's a sample email that was sent out. It has a direct link to the Zoom meeting, as well as a direct link to providing public comment. So when we were sending these emails earlier during the day, we had folks clicking on the Zoom meeting, and perhaps being disappointed that nothing was going on. And so what we switched later on is that we started sending those emails closer to the actual time of when the meeting would start, 5 or 3 minutes before, so that folks had that information readily and they could easily also participate in our public hearings. Some of their database trends, we have 295 unique hearing attendees. 24 of those attendees were from paid social media ads, and 36 people from our database have attended multiple of our hearings. So we launched paid social media ads on Facebook and Google AdWords in both Spanish and English, and you can see a sample there on the slide. Our media ads have reached over 473,730 unique people within LAUSD boundaries, so it was a very broad reach. We've had 569,536 impressions and 20,700 link clicks, which also is equal to a 3.63 click-through rate, which is higher than the usual benchmarks click-through rate of 0.9%. From those, we identified 225 people who asked to learn more about this process, and they were followed up, and some of them also provided us with the email, which then got added to our email distribution list. On our organic social media outreach, we're currently managing Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account. Our Facebook is currently at 110 likes, 115 followers, and our posts altogether have reached 146,808 people. On our Instagram, we have 128 followers with 772 impressions within the last 30 days. On Twitter, we have 57 followers with 22.3K impressions in the last 28 days. And most recently, we opened up a YouTube channel, where we posted all of our public hearings, as well as the informational video that was presented at the beginning of the public hearings for folks to more easily access all of those meetings. And meetings like this will also be posted on there, to continue to offer that transparency to the public. So these are just a couple of sample posts that were shared by, some of our partners and folks that were trying to assist us in getting the word out. This is board member Monica Garcia's post on Facebook. This was a post from the LAUSD official Facebook account. We have Speaker Rendon is sharing our flyer on his social media, on his Instagram in particular. This was a post from board member Kelly Gonez, who also shared it on Instagram. We have Assembly member Santiago sharing our flyer on his Twitter account. And the Highland Park Neighborhood Council also sharing our flyer on their Twitter account. This is just a small sample of some of those shares. There was a lot more folks that shared and reshared some of their posts on social media. One of the ways that we tracked, whether folks were receiving our information was through our Bitly links. We developed 2 Bitly links that we were posting on regularly on our flyers and on social media. That one of them directed folks directly to the Zoom meeting, the bit.ly/redistrict LAUSD. It's easy to remember, easy to share with folks. That way they don't have to put in all of the Zoom numbers and all of that. And so from August 10th through September 1st, we had 1,092 links to that clicks to that link. And then for the redistrict LAUSD comment, which took folks directly to the public comment forum, there was 286 clicks to that. So this is proof that the information was getting out to folks. People were clicking on the link. Maybe not all of them actually turned out to the meeting. However, they did get the information. I also hosted an educational workshop for a group of about 12 attendees. My main purpose was to keep it very intimate and small. During the public hearings, I noticed that a lot of our community members had questions regarding redistricting and questions that we couldn't really answer because of the format of the meetings. And so, this was about a 2-hour-long meeting with folks on a Friday night, composed of some student organizers from Promesa Boyle Heights, as well as Eastern communities, and some school staff and parents. I did it bilingual. And so, it was very tailored to the community. And I did notice that this was very helpful in empowering community members to feel educated on the topic. Most of these folks that attended that workshop actually turned out to the meetings, and they're interested in learning more, interested in getting more engaged. And so I'm looking to continue to host a couple more of these this month in that sort of very intimate setting, to really allow the opportunity for community members to feel safe and ask all the questions that they might have around redistricting. On the formal communications media outreach side, we've released 3 press releases and 1 op-ed piece, shared that with every time with about 93 different media outlets. Currently, the earned coverage that we've received has been through the Daily News, the LA Wave in print, Path, the Boulevard Sentinel, and the LA Sentinel. It's definitely been a difficult topic for earned media coverage. We haven't done any media ad buys or anything like this. So all of this is earned media coverage that we've garnered. And so, in moving towards a new strategy and sort of getting creative as to how we can make these stories a little bit more interesting for the media to cover, we are partnering with community-based organizations to co-author some of these op-ed pieces. So in the works, we have an op-ed that is currently going to be covered by the Y, and there's a couple of nonprofit organizations, community-based organizations that we are looking to pitch to, and hopefully they will sign on this op-ed. And the media team has also been working to secure a couple of opportunities for interviews with the commissioners. And so, we look to your support in committing to these interviews, so that, through that opportunity, we can also continue to get the word out about LAUSD redistricting. So just a general chart of what our public hearing turnout looked like. As briefly mentioned in the past, we saw this growth turnout as the meetings progressed. And so overall, we had 402 attendees. 354 of those attendees were directly connected to us via the Zoom webinar, and 48 over the phone. And those public hearings yielded 97 public comments. For the second phase of outreach, we are looking to continue to push and collect additional public comments. We're strategically focusing on reaching out to community-based organizations that do work around civic engagement, educational advocacy, to also get some of their folks to submit some of our public comment forms. There are organizations at the moment that are doing workshops and having their community folks submit comments to the LA City Redistricting Commission, others to the LA County, others to the state. And so, want to try to see if we can find a way to partner with them to also get some of their community members to submit comments to our commission. We'll be reaching out directly to the city representatives at the local cities within the LAUSD boundaries to also submit formal letters and comments to the commission, as well as direct outreach to the neighborhood councils. And the street team will continue to be out at the community in events and wherever there's foot traffic, to continue to educate the community about in this case, the upcoming 3 public hearings in October, as well as continue to collect public comments from them. With regards to the October public hearings, and the maps and the draft maps, as soon as those draft maps are made public, we want to print out those maps and start sharing them and putting them in community spaces where the community will have access to that information with a quick blurb on the side on how they can participate in the process and also provide their public input. Currently, we've received commitments from the Y to post the maps on their centers, as well as the LA City Parks and Recreation Department to also post it as well. We will continue to seek additional commitments from other key organizations, maybe church congregations to really post these up and so they can be out in the public as much as possible. I strongly believe that if we get these maps out physically in the community, we'd get a larger turnout and more engagement. And so, we'll continue to expand our list of CBOs, elected officials, and make sure strategically do outreach to labor in the second phase, and continue to also incorporate additional educational advocacy groups in the process as well. So this is an overview. Just want to thank all the commissioners that took the time to meet with me in phase 1. A lot of these partnerships did come out of those conversations as well. So I thank you for that opportunity, and those that, all of you that are helping to promote this information, thank you. And I continue to seek your support in this as we continue in this process. And just wanted to open up to questions or comments. I don't know if Commissioner Johnson or Commissioner Franco have any comments on this. I know we had a discussion before this meeting, so I don't know if we have any additional comments.
Hi, yes, this is Commissioner Franco. I apologize. I do want to share my thoughts, and I'm going to step away for a few minutes. I need to grab my kid from childcare. But I did want to just thank you, Genesis, for the report, as well as for the time that you've taken to meet with community and promotoras and some of the youth leaders, right? Because I think that's an important part of this process, right? In our meeting, we highlighted a number of just questions that we wanted to get more information on, and I'll let Commissioner Johnson kind of share her thoughts as well. But I think overall, from my perspective, one of the things that I wanted to elevate was really looking at the communication aspect, focusing. I noticed on the social media posts, I felt there were specifically, and I gave an example of a post on August 22nd that really kind of mentioned the meeting, but then went into like the school board members set policy for and identified things that the school board members do. Well, I understand, right, and I know the feedback that we were given was, this is, we're trying to find a way to communicate and really help community know why it's important to be part of this process, right, and that kind of, how does it impact is with the selection of school board members. But I think part of what I saw early on was more so maybe still a lack of education, right, and maybe some confusion with our communities around, what our role of the commission is versus what kind of the public comment or focus would be as engaging through this process, right? So some of my suggestions were really more around how can we really maybe focus a little more on creating some of the educational outreach pieces around explaining like what is redistricting, what is the role, what's the process, because I know we as commissioners have discussed like the pre-mapping process and the post-mapping process as far as the public hearing, but maybe if we can begin to really kind of focus on some of the infographics that outline this can help, you know, for all of us kind of conceptualize like how is this process moving, and then where is community able to get engaged, right? And then so I think we were, you know, highlighting some of those pieces, and then I know Genesis, you shared also, you know, there were 97 meetings with 97, you know, CBOs, but really thinking about how do we continue to engage them, right? Because we also know nonprofits are currently stretched thin as well. But how do we continue to like, you know, engage them in this process and get their support through just the next stages of this process. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Franco. I'll share some of the comments that I had, and we were happy to have representatives from the contractors in our meeting so that we could ask some questions to make it speak specifically to what we were talking about. And I agreed with Commissioner Franco on what happens when people get that flyer. Not only from a standpoint of what it says, but just as a point of information, there is a lot of information on that flyer. And I just would want to have you take a look at it and maybe make it a little more user-friendly, and that's the term that I use. Because when you get a flyer and there's a lot of verbiage on it in thick paragraphs, you tend not to read it. You want to gloss over it and maybe you'll look at part of it. But if we're using it for education, I think hopefully we can look at a way to condense some of that information so that it's more readily available. I asked some questions about the street team, how effective they were, because I just gave an example that the street team was at the Gardena Jazz Festival handing out flyers. And I happened to be at the Gardena Jazz Festival, and I didn't see them, nor did I see any flyers. And that's no indictment. It's just that at a huge venue like that, where they were and how they got around to people, it was probably pretty difficult. And maybe they had a table, I'm not sure, but those are the kind of things that when you talk about making use of the money that is spent on flyers, even though I understand they are printed by the city. However, you do have to pay the street team to go out and do that. I also commented on the fact that those the media, the Twitter and Facebook and all, while the numbers were great in terms of people responding to them, they didn't really correlate to the number of people that we got at the meetings. Now, we did begin to grow the number of people that started showing up at our meetings towards the end. So hopefully that process is going to increase the number of people that we're getting. And I agree with Ms. Coronado that having the map out there could make it easier for people to want to take part in our meetings. We also talked about, or Lisa also asked the question about, we reached out to these CBOs, but did we actually see the input or what if they said they were going to put something in their newsletter? Did we actually see it? Was there any follow-up on that? Because they are busy, and we made recommendations that maybe we can be a little more helpful with them into making that happen. And I think finally my comment was to the PR firm around press releases that they use their earned media to do press releases, but many of the smaller and even larger, and I use the Los Angeles Sentinel as an example. If you really want to get your flyer or something in there on a regular basis, you have to pay them. So I guess there was some question whether or not there was some budget to be able to do that. But again, when you look at outreach and you look at what has to happen in a city the size of Los Angeles, I think there's some ways that to be to look at how you can do outreach within your budget, from the get-go, but press releases without follow-up, without making sure that they go into these, sending out press releases to that many news media, it's kind of a hit and miss, and it has been based on the report of how many have actually taken up our press releases. But I was happy to hear that they're going to start taking more advantage of churches, because especially in the African American community, the churches are a good way to get information out. They all have newsletters, and they have different kinds of reports during the service, and something that's educational like redistricting, I think would not necessarily be a hard sell. Even that's, even in terms of putting a flyer out to something like that. But that was one of the things that they said they were going to start to look at. So all in all, I was appreciated, the amount of time and effort they put into this outreach. But of course, we're looking for hopefully results that can help us and get the education out as well as people out in the community. So hopefully phase 2 will generate some more of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Hernandez.
Hello, hi Genesis. Thank you so much for your update and for the numbers, just the number crunching. It's really great to see what those numbers look like, especially public hearings, and to learn more about your outreach efforts as we continue to get the word out here. I do have a few questions and some feedback. One thing that I wanted to highlight that Commissioner Johnson brought up was, the flyer. I noticed that there's a lot of words, and sometimes that can be, for anyone, a little off-putting, because you want to know what, any event is when you see a flyer immediately, how it stands out. And I feel like more recently, we're seeing a lot of visuals, videos, sort of like this TikTok culture. Not that I'm saying we should do TikTok, but to give you an idea of like how we can get folks and their attention. So I think we should look at more visuals and not so much text, and also how we can grab their attention. Like one of the flyers just said, join a public hearing. Honestly, if I were to see that, I'm like, man, I already have a number of meetings to attend, like another public hearing. But if we talk about like, participate, make your voice heard, or like, are you a school aged, do you have students in K through 12, or some other way to like capture folks and their attention. I think that would also just help to just at least get, more clicks. Also, honestly, I'm a little concerned too with the number of folks we have on our email list, because, we're talking about one district and how it's like over 600,000, the population should be over 600,000 for us to have a little over 500. I want to see how, we can work on that end to bring up those numbers. And one of my questions is, what is the process for deciding what locations you go out to? For instance, you listed like grocery stores and libraries and other sites and venues. Can you just maybe walk me through that? Or walk us through how that process goes?
Yeah, I don't know if we're able to bring Brian in as a panelist, but we have a representative from NSA, North Star Alliance. So they selected a lot of their targeted locations based on foot traffic, and so also tried to make it as expansive and target different cities and not sort of focus on one city. But I don't know if Brian wants to expand on that a little bit.
Hi, Brian Stedge with helping with North Star Alliance and with Strategies 360. Thank you for your question, Commissioner. Largely, we targeted high trafficked areas, whether it's a community event or grocery stores, places within the district where we know we were going to get the most bang for our buck when it comes to passing out flyers. So that was kind of where we looked. Place where you can position 1 to 2 people really quickly. Hand out a ton of flyers, and also when we had the iPads, trying to educate people and also getting public comment. So it was, I think the report has the full list. We can get you a more detailed list, but we basically were targeting as high traffic areas as possible.
And on that note, when you say high traffic, so how do you determine that, or what tools do you use to say this is high traffic area?
I would say that NSA in the past has done a lot of the kind of outreach. So they have set areas where they know that they will not get kicked out by grocery store owners, which is always, it's private property. Everyone who's done community organizing has definitely been kicked out. I've been kicked out way too many times. So it's basically areas where they've had grocery store success, parks, places where they know there's a continuing back and forth of people. There's no, I don't have a specific data metric to like 10 people per every 5 minutes, but I can do that for social media.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just curious how that works, because I'm wondering if maybe, I know we have our committee, but maybe all of our commissioners can also suggest an area that we're familiar in our district to, where you can come out and also conduct some of that outreach. So maybe that's a consideration for the committee and for co-chairs Johnson and Franco.
Absolutely. And Commissioner, we'd be happy if everyone wants to send us a list. We're happy to send the street team. Just a reminder in terms of Commissioner Johnson had brought this up. The flyers are probably the least effective method of outreach. We're talking about, most of the commissions probably done grassroots activism. You stand at a grocery store, you pass out 100 flyers. If one person even says something nice to you, that's a big day. You're getting out a ton of flyers. So this is less, when we're looking at this, we've handed out close to 12,000 flyers. The surveys that Genesis put had few responses to the flyers. But at the same time, we're dealing with virtual hearings. We're dealing with a terrible digital divide in the city of Los Angeles and LAUSD. We're trying to hit as many bases as we can. So we have the digital outreach, which is as broad as possible. And there's, I think, close to 2.5 million people in LAUSD. We have the CBOs, which is usually the most, hopefully will be generate the most amount of people, because they're the organizations that are on the ground and they're going to feel them, they're going to care the most about the maps. And then of course you have, the flyering, which is, like I said, if we can get 1 out of 100, we pass out one person interested, I think that's a pretty good win.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm very familiar with those days. It's a good day for outreach. So I hear you on being out in public and trying to get folks' attention. I'm just curious, so how many folks do you usually use for the street team, and how much of our effort is being utilized for these flyers, and just to get an idea here, because we're saying that media, social media is where it's at, but then we're also saying digital divide. I'm sure there's a need to find a balance here to make sure that we're really getting the word out.
Yeah, so on terms of resource deployment, in terms of actual money being spent on the street teams, I don't have a number on that. That would be more Ernesto, but it's not a lot. It's like 1 to 2 hours, a couple locations, passing out flyers. The bulk of the money is directly being related to digital ads, which is very wide net, and then also a lot of emails, phone calls, and meetings to CBOs and organizations trying to cast as wide a net. And with the CBOs, that's always one of the issues when we first started, was obviously the time frame. CBOs have a lot to do. We have the redistricting. LAUSD was just opening. There was a ton of stuff going on. CBOs are complex organizations that, they're not just going to send an email. They're going to want to have a conversation. They want to hear more, and they want to know about the timeline. So these are a lot of our boots on the ground outreaches, not just the street teams, but actually meeting with organizations, educating them on what the timeline is. And that's where most of our time and commitment goes to.
Okay, great. And I know I've been here for a while, so I'll just sort of wrap up on my end. I didn't hear anything about PSAs like on radios. That might be another consideration. If you're reaching out to PTAs who might be meeting virtually, I think I'd also make that recommendation. Would love to hear more about the trends, if any, that you're hearing post our public hearings. And then also, if you can share the educational workshop PowerPoint that you shared regarding the promotoras, I'd love to see what it is that we're sharing with the community and how maybe we can also utilize that in other, in forums. You also mentioned some of our young leaders, so maybe that's an opportunity as well. So I'll leave it there. I have a number of ideas, and happy to also join the outreach committee separately from the data and mapping if that's also helpful to spare our time here. But thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, just to address some of your, suggestions, we'll definitely, reach out to PTAs and see how we can incorporate PSAs as well into the outreach. With regards to the presentation, I used basically the presentation that was for the public hearings. It just did a lot more explaining, a lot more sort of taking the time to break it down to folks. There was a lot of back and forth in questions in Spanish and English because I was doing it myself bilingually. So it was a lot. It was a 2-hour workshop, but I think it was worth it. At the end, I feel folks felt a lot more empowered after being able to get responses to all of their questions around why is this important, or why do we do this, or what is different, and how is this going to benefit me, right? And so moving forward, I think, there are a lot more educational pieces, educational infographics that we can definitely develop. I know Commissioner Lundquist will be presenting at a group of students later this month. And so I'm going to try to see if I can work on developing a presentation for her that's more student directed and student friendly. And that can also be something that we use to present to other student groups. Any teachers that might want us to present at their government class as well is another opportunity to just engage students as a stakeholder population in this outreach effort as well.
Yeah, I really love that idea because I think this is a way we can start to engage them early on because this is impacting them as well. So I really do like that. I'm glad to hear that you all are doing that. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, and one more thing. I know you mentioned the email database being very small comparison to sort of overall LAUSD. There have been talks around potentially buying a voter file and sort of expanding our database that way. I know there's some pros and cons to it, and if you want to have that discussion, we can also. I know Brian had some thoughts on it too, so we can have that discussion now if commissioners have time for that.
I mean, I'm happy to join the next outreach committee just to save time here on the larger commission meeting to discuss that. And also during that meeting, maybe you can share more about what questions you're receiving from the public, because if you're getting that level of questions in that setting, that tells me that we need to do a better job with our presentation for our public hearings so folks understand it. So again, I thank you for entertaining my questions, but I will, again, be happy to join the next outreach committee meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Hernandez. Commissioner Waite?
So I've been discussing this with some other local elected officials who actually have been approaching me saying, so explain to me what's going on. And it seems like the basic issue is there's so much oxygen being sucked out of the room by the county redistricting going on that is affecting elected officials throughout the county, of course. And then within the city of LA, you have LA redistricting. Other cities that have districts are doing their own redistricting, and then congressional redistricting. So I think it really makes for very much an uphill climb for us to reach folks, and more than that, to get them to care, because it's not like this doesn't matter, but they just hope somebody will take care of it and it's not them. It's sort of the feeling that I'm getting. People are like, oh yeah, that's great. Hey, let me know when you get to the end of the process and let's see how it looks. Those are the sort of answers that I'm getting from people who are very connected. So if that's their reaction, then I figure your typical LAUSD parent is gonna go, look, I got a lot to deal with right now. Oh, plus there's the recall election going on. Talk about sucking the life out of the room. That's really having a big impact on us. If we were just doing LAUSD redistricting right now, I think this would get a lot more attention. As a matter of fact, I just heard on KPCC at 4 o'clock as I was driving home, they had a story about the LA City Redistricting Commission. And they have a hearing tomorrow, by the way, if anybody would like to listen. I don't know what kind of attendance they're getting in their meetings either, but we need to recognize that that's a real challenge that we have, that there are just a lot of other things going on at the same time. So it's going to be difficult for us to really get people's attention on this.
Thank you for your comment, Commissioner Waite.
So I'll just say I mean, I know that we met, both myself and the vice chair also met with the team. I think as we kind of head into the last month and a half of both outreach and hearings before we deliberate on both potential map formation and eventually a map that we will send to the council for review, is that it'd be good to continue to, I heard it from you all, but just continue to much more focus on folks who are have more stake in these map formations, right? It's community-based organizations, maybe neighborhood councils, other folks, a lot of the folks who came out, we have to, I think, post recall effort, I think we're gonna be able to get more of their time, especially folks that are in the educational ecosystem. So I think that's an important piece. I think it's been clear from the outreach, most of the outreach has come from community-based groups that are mobilizing residents, students, and young people to these events. So, and then I appreciate any other commissioners. I know folks have done different things to like bring Genesis or the team to do presentations at networks that they're a part of. If we could continue to grow that. I know people have been busy, but any which way you can do. So I appreciate Commissioner Hernandez being willing to both either join a meeting, but also I think you could maybe meet with Genesis before then, because I think the window is closing. I'm not sure when the next outreach committee is. And so I think, that's going to be helpful as we kind of activate the folks, and I know that there's going to be more calls for us to probably present to different stakeholder groups. So either myself or the vice chair or any other commissioner that may be interested to do that, it'd be good to just share the presentations that I heard like Commissioner Lundquist has done for different groups, and then maybe I've done other stuff, so that we could just get out there. I think part of our job is to talk about redistricting, but also I think now that we're going to have potentially maps, potential map creations, it'd be good to just educate folks about these concepts so people become more active and engaged around this process. So I appreciate the work that's been done, and I think it'd be good now to just focus on what's really worked moving forward, because the window is short, and so that we could actually continue to build momentum, right? You saw that, right? There was 200 people in the last hearing, the last two hearings. So if we could continue to build momentum, we have 4 coming up, so we'll have less. So then we could really focus our outreach to build energy, excitement, especially now you have something that they could actually be on, what they really want, right? So just continue to build momentum on that and focus on what's working, and then just leverage all the commissioners on here. I know Commissioner Gould just left, but she's also said that she's willing to both leverage her relationships, be it the city or the school district or county, to access some of these parent groups, student groups. One of the things I forgot I mentioned, I didn't mention to you before, Genesis, it kind of stepped my mind. I actually have access to all the government councils for all of LUSD. So instead of going student council by student council, there's actually a meeting they meet. So I think we could probably get on their agenda virtually, because they would be excited to be a part of this process too. Because I heard the Commissioner Lundquist is going to be presenting to some students. So that's a really good collection of I think it's 50 to 100 presidents of high schools across the city, because I think there's 100+ high schools in LUSD. So.
Thank you. Yeah, that would be great. That would be helpful.
So we have Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner, did you have another comment too?
Yeah,
Okay,
I was going to underscore the last portion you mentioned about utilizing us to help present, but like the chair or vice chair to participate and utilize the commissioners in that way. I'm happy to volunteer. So just wanted to underscore that. Thank you.
Great. Commissioner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to say to Commissioner Hernandez, as one of the co-chairs of the Outreach Committee, we welcome you and anybody else wanting to share information with us, either by coming to one of our meetings or by, more importantly, talking directly to Genesis, because she's the one that's got to really put this stuff in motion. So I really appreciate the fact that you and any other commissioners are willing to help. And I also want to comment, and I see our role as commissioners, not to concern ourselves with those people who may not care that we're doing redistricting, may not be interested, but there are many people, parents, students, teachers, others alike, that are interested in the fact that we're doing redistricting. And so we need to focus our efforts on that. You know, I hear a lot about, you know, people aren't interested, they're not picking up our flyer, but we still have to move forward because that's the charge that we were given. And so having a positive attitude, which I think we all have, is we move forward, I think is the way that I want to proceed. And I hope everyone else is willing to proceed on that note as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Is there any other comments?
I just had one, just one quick thing to share with.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to share that we'll be hosting a mapping workshop as well, and we hope to also share with community-based organizations to encourage as many groups to also draft their own map. And so, you know, we'll be looking to doing that as well, and hopeful to continue to engage the public in that process.
Great. Thank you, Genesis. Thank you, Brian. Thank you all for presenting and taking questions from the commissioners. Excited of the energy we have as we kind of head into the stretch run of this process. The next thing, Andrew, I'm not sure, you always say, like, I think we presented everything on from the executive director, but is there anything else to add?
There is just one thing I did want to mention. As we, you know, when we do public comment, we're always quoting the governor's executive order. And it's important for the commission to understand that currently that executive order that allows us to hold our meetings completely virtual expires at the end of September. It's certainly my anticipation, I think a lot of people across the state, that will get extended after the election next week. But that being said, Genesis and I are preparing contingency plans to hold hybrid meetings so we can do it both virtually and in person. So I just wanted to make the commission aware of that in case that order doesn't get extended. Everything that we do in October will have to be in person in some form or function, and we'll have to try, so we're trying to figure out how to make that work. But other than that, that's all I have to report this evening, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And then the last item is any future agenda items?
Yeah, so I don't have any off the top of my head. Certainly next week, we're going to focus on concept maps, direction on draft maps and public map submission. So it's going to be maps all the time next week. Lots of visuals.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Any other from any commissioners? Suggestions or anything? I know we're pretty packed in terms of what we have to accomplish. So, okay, great.
Mr. Chairman, I can't be here next week. I'll be out at the Contract Cities Conference out in the desert with officials from around the area. Anyway, I look forward to taking a look, and I'll try to provide input ahead of time. I know this is a very important time in what we're doing. And also, I'm hoping that gives me an opportunity to talk with a lot of local elected officials and share what we have. So, because they've been asking, so where are you? And, they want to know, they just don't want to get involved yet. And so I'm hoping this will be the impetus to say, look, here it is. So this is what we're talking about now, provide us something useful. So anyway, I will miss seeing you all, but I appreciate what you're doing, and I'll try to do what I can behind the scenes.
Thank you, Commissioner Wade. We're going to send you with a bunch of big cardboard signs of maps. You can do
and flyers too.
The sad thing, these people, they know me and they would think nothing of seeing me carrying around stacks of great big maps. They would just,
yeah, there you go.
Anyway, they would figure I'm just doing another presentation for them. So, but this is going to be way more important.
There we go. So I guess, can we just get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn, Mr. Chair.
I'll second. It seems like nobody wants to leave.
I know. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Great, y'all. Thank you for the good work. Have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.